All right, go ahead.
All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the June 8th meeting of the Westwood School Building Committee Sustainability Subcommittee. I'm going to start by doing a roll call. I know Ken can't make it yet. Brian Baer.
Here.
John Cummings.
Here.
Lema Jean-Baptiste.
Here.
I am here. Tony Mullen.
Here.
And then we have ex officio, I think Julie Gervais couldn't make it today. So Tom Philbin.
Here.
Great. Okay. I just want to recognize that we have a live stream to provide real-time public access to the activities of the Sustainability Subcommittee. And that's available online at westwood.k.12.ma.us/live. So we have two discussion items for today. The first is to review the LEED checklist. So Rob, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about that.
Thanks, Mia. I'd like to introduce a couple people from our team. One is Eric Ruoff and Michael Munn from the Green Engineer. They are our sustainability consultants, and so I'm actually going to ask them to begin the discussion on the LEED program.
Thank you guys for joining.
Yeah, hi folks. It's good to see this group again. It's been a while since we connected, and I look forward to catching up and giving you an update of where we are. Just a little housekeeping element from the Green Engineer side is Michael Munn will be joining as the direct project manager from Green Engineer for the project moving forward. I'll still be part of the team, but Michael will be hauling the heavy weight here. So he's going to run through some slides to give a little lead overview and run through some of those owner-based questions and elements we have to discuss today. Michael, I don't know. Do not have the ability to share my screen. Do you?
Good question. I think so.
Well,
I'll take care of it right now.
Okay, we got it.
We good?
Yeah, we see you.
Okay. So, hi folks. I think the main purpose today is kind of give a more detailed review for folks, still keeping it pretty high level and trying to move quickly here, but talk a little bit more about the LEED certification process and specifically for the Westwood Elementary School project. And kind of get everyone's expectations on the LEED certification process going forward. There are a few questions, not too many, hopefully, but for owner direction for the project that we can touch base on after reviewing the LEED certification process and the scorecard. So if I can move slides here, the first thing. Just a reminder, I'm sure everyone on the call is well aware that seeking the MSBA Green Schools commitment and the requirements there, to demonstrate that energy performance and achieve the LEED version 4 certified at a minimum, and to exceed the 10% improvement over Massachusetts base energy code.
So during the feasibility in SD, the team with the committee and town's approval, did select using the LEED program rather than the Northeast CHIPS program to demonstrate compliance with the Green Schools requirement, and is pursuing the 2% additional reimbursements for exceeding the energy code by 20%. We talked a lot about energy performance and the importance of that in feasibility in SD. We know we're driving for a very low EUI building, working with the utilities on that program for low energy buildings, and so are well positioned to vastly exceed the minimum requirements of the MSBA right now. But we did want to just put a little refresher out there and what's required of the team from the MSBA perspective.
what percentage are we going to exceed on the energy code? Ballpark.
Well, we don't know that yet. We've done some just preliminary analysis. Now that we are launching into DD, the full energy model will be built. That will be representative of the actual design, and we'll have a better understanding of what that is. So once we get that full model from GGD, we'll be able to answer that more accurately. But I would say we'll be vastly exceeding that 20% threshold.
So the last item there is also touching on the commissioning of the building, and MSBA requires, and pays for the entire enhanced level of building commissioning, both for HVAC, MEP systems, envelope, and monitoring-based commissioning. So LEED for Schools, version 4, different levels of certification. The important piece that can be kind of tricky, but to explain to everyone now is LEED has issued beta updates to its rating system. And so we're calling it LEED version 4.1. It is currently optional for projects that register as a LEED version 4 project, which this school will. And you can opt into specific credits for the LEED version 1 newer updated requirements. And so, that's important to just keep in mind. We'll indicate later on, which set of requirements we're going for. LEED version 4.1 energy performance requirements are more stringent. But because we're registering as a LEED version 4 project, we can pick and choose the updated requirements that we pursue. So certain thresholds applied to different levels of certification here. You see 40 to 49 points is getting the project to certified level, which is the minimum MSBA requirement. 50 to 59 for silver, 60 to 79 for gold, and anything above 80 would be a platinum level certification. Another requirement of the LEED certification program is that LEED certified projects have to share with the USGBC, the administrators of the LEED program, their energy and water consumption for a minimum of 5 years. And many times what projects do is kind of enroll in Energy Star's portfolio manager, link USGBC's accounts in order to be able to view the data entered into that platform. And so that's just a heads up, that time period begins at occupancy or certification. And there is that commitment for at least 5 years. So we've got here the LEED project checklist for the project. And I apologize if that's a little small print here. But I think what we wanted to do is get everyone here familiar with, this kind of maybe confusing at first glance document that is going to serve as kind of the master, tracking of the LEED certification for the project. And so if we just want to orient folks to what we're looking at here, starting at the left columns, we've got, the points tracking all the way on the left, and the green is what we are tracking as yes for the project. 2 to the right here is kind of a higher, more likely maybe column, and then less likely maybe, and features or points that are tracked as no. And then moving across column to the right here, there's just credit numbering for organization purposes, the credit names themselves, number of points associated, responsible team members that kind of take the point on each of these credits, and then the project notes themselves.
I could just interject for 1 second, Michael. So just so everyone is aware, this is a scorecard that is primarily used by the design team, right? So us and all of our consultants go through this checklist and see which items we are integrating, which ones make sense to integrate, and if there's any that require owner input. We were hoping to review several of those today, right? So when we get through this, we've got a few of these that surface up and say, hey, these are owner questions. And then as we continue to move forward, there may be ones that come up and say, well, we could do this, but it's going to cost some money if we go after that point. And we would go back to you and say, okay, is this something that we want to pursue? And so, the mindset here is that we are integrating things into the project that make sense, that we are already kind of incorporated because we're designing a high performance building. It's already baked into the overall project. And if there's anything to kind of go outside of that, we will be asking you guys to say, how do we make a construction we want to go? So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Okay, so still talking overview of the LEED certification program. All around the left here, there's kind of tiny font, a D or a C. And so what we're referring to here is with the credits and the requirements are specific to the design phase or the design of the building, as Rob was alluding to, and others are specific to the construction activities for the project later on, should it proceed to that point. So for LEED certifications, the project can and usually does submit in 2 phases, and they are called the design phase review and construction phase review. After passing those 2 review phases is when the project would officially achieve full certification. So just wanted to make that distinction for folks.
Yeah, and one thing to note on that before we go, right, there is a fee that's required to be paid to the USGBC for registering the project, the design phase review and the construction phase review. They're pretty low dollar in the grand scheme of things. It's $1,200 to register the project, and there's a price per square foot for both the design phase and construction phase. The design phase is less than a nickel a square foot, and the construction phase is $0.015 per square foot for the fee paid directly to USGBC for them to just do the review piece. So one thing kind of just in a coordination perspective is paying for those reviews. In previous projects, what we've often had is either the OPM or the architect pay on behalf of the project team and just submit that as a reimbursable as part of the just overall process. That tends to speed the payment rather than having Westwood pay directly if there's issues with setting the USGBC up as vendors or what have you. We can lay that out in more particular for Westwood's review, but just a note as we're talking about the applications themselves.
Mm-hmm. And then just, additional kind of bookkeeping or housekeeping rather, there is a LEED certification agreement that Westwood would have to sign off on. And, many times you might want to review the language in there, but it's not really up for debate from USGBC. And also for the green engineer to kind of act on Westwood's behalf through whether it be payments or the certification process, there would another document, a confirmation of agent's authority is another item we would want from Westwood.
I have a question on the electric vehicles. We have a large program going in now, and under the current regulations, if you have a new project similar to this one, Eversource will reimburse the contractor 100% of the cost of adding chargers to the project. So, for example, at the Islington Library, the contractor there we gave him the specs rather, and he's putting in the electrical infrastructure that's necessary. and the Eversource reimburses them 100% of the cost.
Right, Tom, you're getting ahead of us, but that's one of the things we want to discuss today. You're right that there's a few different incentive programs available for EV charging. One that you're talking about, the Eversource, the EV Make Ready program, is more about infrastructure, right? So they'll pay for the trenching and all of the conduit and getting everything up to the charger itself.
Right.
And then the charger traditionally is they don't pay for the charger itself, but there are some other state incentives that are kind of, they're open and close on a rolling basis to then defer some of the cost, potentially pay for in completion the EV charger themselves. So the team is looking at maximizing all of the utility incentives available for the EV charging. And that's one of the questions we want to discuss. We're going to discuss a little further today. So you teed that up very well. But before we even, sorry, go ahead, whoever.
Eric, and Tom, that we do have to confirm that. So it took the utility company for a huge amount of effort to get them to agree to exclude the incentive dollars from the MSBA reimbursement. And I just want to make sure that they have this agreement includes the EV station incentive dollars, because I would hate to get the money from utility company and then only get it deducted from MSBA grant. That's something to keep in mind. That's all.
That's an interesting layer. Thank you. I think we'll have to follow up on that for sure. So, what we're trying to get here is starting from the way top, right? And so Michael's just kind of walking through what are we looking at and what are the pieces. He was just mentioning registration. And one of the questions we have to the team here is whether or not we want to go forward with registering the project right now in this DD phase, or whether or not that you want to wait until DD is complete and the final project has been finally approved by Westwood. So just a question whether or not you want to do that. There's, it's $1,200 to register and not a big dollar value. We recommend project teams register as soon in the process as possible, just to lock in under the current requirements. So
we have an application in, just so you know, for 5 locations. At least we applied for level 3 on all 5 locations. The police in Westwood expect to get Teslas, believe it or not, police cars. And so they need a level 3 car. Nothing can catch a Tesla but a Tesla. So that's the argument.
how about that?
And also you get a approximately 30-minute charge, so they can have one Tesla and they can use it much more frequently than they could some of the level 2, which takes about 12 hours. And well, the level 1 obviously wouldn't work at all. But we have 5 locations: the police station, the library, the Council on Aging, the high school, and the new library annex over in Islington.
So maybe Michael, skip a few slides forward. Let's just dive into EV, right? One of the things we did want to discuss, and Tom's bringing us there, right, is EV charging, right? Currently, the project includes these 2 dual port, right? So that's 4 charging stations, and that gets us to this 2% threshold that's required right now under the lead requirements. But our question
is that a level 2 or a level 3?
It's a level. It's a level 2. There's some requirements within LEED about what particular type of charger is required, and in fact, the Tesla chargers don't meet all of those criteria. They want to see just kind of the standard level 2 chargers, and so that is what currently is in design. So our question back to you guys is, we see a lot of communities and a lot of projects and a lot of municipalities driving forward with much higher percentages of EV infrastructure in new projects. For instance, Boston requires 25% in new parking for projects, 25% day one installed EV charging stations level 2, and then infrastructure to accommodate future stations for the whole of the remaining parking. Now, this is certainly a different type of project. You know, you're thinking urban, smaller parking, a little bit more compact, but you know, that's just giving you a sense of what's happening out there. So our question to this committee and to Westwood in general is, do you want to go well beyond what the minimum requirement is for LEED in these 4 charging stations?
I got a question for you, Eric. Is there any reason why we couldn't just add 2 more level 3 charging stations to the project, seeing as NSTAR is going to pay for it and it'll hook up with the police cars?
Well,
You can add as many as you like,
difference-
right? As long as we understand what the design intent is and and we have to sort out some of that incentive piece. I think we want to confirm. We certainly, Chin mentioned some potential implications from the MSBA side that could complicate it.
Yeah, I don't want to, you know, get stuff that's free that ends up costing the town because it reduces our grant.
Right. As long as, I mean,
Yeah.
if we not have to pay for it, there's no reason not to add 2. And I'll leave that to you guys someplace other time. But it doesn't, I mean, the LEED, we're going for at least silver, right? All right.
Yeah.
So when we have 2 already plugged in, it sounds like a level 2. The police
have-
are going to
yeah.
have a couple level 3s. Is there any reason why we don't put that in now, at least in the design phase, if it's not going to cost us anything and any reimbursement doesn't cost us anything in the grant and we get reimbursed directly from NSTAR?
But it may affect, John, the transformer design. So that's what you're going to be careful.
Right.
For example, at the police station, we have to add a secondary transformer. And at all the locations where we have transformers, with the exception of the high school, we have to add a secondary transformer. And we add a whole new transformer at the Council on Aging. So
I'm with you.
Costing-
I understand with you, Tom. I'm with you. I'm just saying, this is the point where we say, hey, why don't you look into that opportunity, right?
Exactly.
Okay,
That's
perfect.
what we're looking for, is direction.
There's my
you know,
direction.
go beyond the LEED requirement of these 4 stations or stay put. And then is there, you know, a sense of how extreme? How do we want to just see what the ceiling is for?
So these
ahead,
would be dedicated exclusively for electric vehicles? These parking
Yeah,
spots?
right.
I mean,
yes.
so my concern is that they just go unused at the school.
Sure, right. Then that's always the balance, right? And so, you know,
Yeah, do we have a way of determining demand or need on the school side? Like, do we have any statistics for?
I mean,
the
we can
schools?
ask, I can ask Emily, you know, it will change between now and then.
Yeah.
But we
In
can
10 years,
certainly,
more people will have electric cars.
Yeah,
Right.
But also you got to remember that we're headed toward no fossil fuel cars being made at all.
you're right.
So if
right,
you look
I
at
get
out
that, but we can
beyond
always add
2030,
these if we need to, right?
Right.
I
If
mean,
we
I'm
can get them in free now.
Well,
We can
I think I would just simply, in terms of the limitation is that number one is that we have a fixed budget. So as long as it does not impact the budget and the incentive dollar, that certainly there's no, from John's perspective is that there's no, we will want to do as much, do more. But I just want to be cautious on that,
right.
that
So-
it does not impact the budget.
But I don't think it's just budget implications. I don't want to put in stations if they're not going to go used.
Yeah, but
if they're gonna go
Maya,
unused.
they will be used eventually.
I know,
Without a doubt.
but we can also
if-
just,
but if
you know,
do-
we're
if
going to
you-
get a lot of, parking is a huge pressure point for staff and faculty. And I think if we take up spaces with these such that we're depriving them of, for staff and faculty, we're gonna hear about it. So I just, before we say, let's load up with as much as we can because it's for free, I just want to talk to Emily and the district administration to make sure that we're putting in a number that makes sense, recognizing that there will be future growth, and this is 2024 that the school is opening, and things will look different. But before we sort of make that our baseline and say, let's do as much as we can, I just like to have that conversation.
Because if you have to do it later, of course, then you're going to end up digging up You're going to end up resizing the transformers. You're going to end up with an enormous amount of costs that'll have to be borne entirely by the school, assuming that, unless we presume that there's going to be similar incentive programs still in existence, which I don't think there will be.
And you don't have to designate the spot for electric only until you want to.
Right,
But
right.
you could also put the infrastructure in and they just have a hub so that you can add the equipment later.
I would also add that upsizing the transformer is a cost, and that's just something that we have to understand the overall picture.
Right. That cost might get absorbed by NSTAR, right?
It might, yeah.
And then back charge to the town. And I just want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on all the different moving parts.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
think we need to understand the budget implications, the grant implications, and sort of from a practical perspective.
Yep.
You know.
And we recognize that. What our intent was today was to figure out if we should go beyond what we've already carried. And it sounds like yes, if. And so I think we proceed with getting more information about the available incentives, some cost implications, and some impacts from Eversource's side.
And also,
Eric, on your list, before you go on your list of your checklist you're making right now, would you check to make sure that whatever we put in there is compatible with the future designs of the town's car, police and fire? So make sure, like, it wouldn't do us no good to put this in if the police cars couldn't use it.
Well, Michael, as a Tesla owner, can you speak to? Can you plug into level
You can
2?
plug in to a level 2, but it just takes
Yeah, it
Take-
takes a while.
the amount of miles you get per half hour of charge.
Right,
is
but
how
it
they
doesn't
rate it.
prohibit them from using those stations.
Right.
We might as well use what they need, right?
At the high school, it's going in the faculty parking lot.
Are we thinking the police are parking at Hanlon?
They
No.
park at the Hamlin all the time for every event. For them not to charge up with it there would be counterintuitive.
Yeah, well,
I mean-
the whole reason, John, we're getting the level 3 at the police station is so that there's sufficient range that they never have to.
Right,
never
but there's
have to
nothing
charge
down on
up.
the Islington, on your list, there's nothing in Islington that has a level 3 or is scheduled to have a level 3.
But we should not
So
need
this would be the
one.
closest.
We should not need one if we do the design at the police station right. In other words, we get it so that they eventually have one car and that they get an hour charge. And the way they use the car, with a range of approximately 300 miles, they'll never exceed their range. So they'll come in with, I could go into this more in detail, but.
No, I'm with you. I'm just saying we should have at least one
Yeah.
because they park there throughout the week a number of times.
Yeah,
Might as
well,
well have
they
them,
turn
you
the
know,
car
charged.
off. They're not charging the car at the point
Yes.
it's charged.
If
Unless
they
it's-
have,
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd rather not plan for the police to be charging at the
What I'm
school.
trying to do is to get the school building committee to work with the town, and that's Eric making sure that whatever he puts in there can be used by the town, because we're all in this together and we're asking everybody in the town to vote for it. So one of the positive things we could say is, hey, not only that, but we're also bringing the charging stations into the Islington Center that weren't here before. Another community positive when we go through our
Right.
positive
So,
list.
and I think that's a great point. I 100% agree with that. I just think that when we're, if we have to go one level up because the police have certain cars and they may charge them at Hanlon, and that will, create a ripple effect through the design, I think we just need to think about that carefully.
No,
Presumably they're
we're just
fully
asking these
charged
guys.
during the day.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't know we had already designed it. I thought this was, hey, what's the checklist for our design? And Eric's asking us what we should do. And Eric, look into this, find out if it's going to cost us nothing or if it's going to cost us something, and then let us decide. We're not trying to make the decision now. Right?
Right.
We're just asking them
Yeah.
to do the homework.
Okay.
That's what he does, right? I mean, he's expert at it.
He is the expert. That's why he's here.
So the only other, it'd be helpful again, and again, I know things, to Tom's point, will change over the next 350 whatever years, but it'd be also just helpful, I don't know, for them or just even some data point of, if you just even looked at Hanlon staff today and Deerfield staff as a starting point, is it 5% have electric, or is it if it was 20%, then I'd say, well, let's do more, it's at least a starting point to give a little
Yeah.
data as well.
Well,
Yeah.
today those numbers will be minuscule, but I'm
Yeah,
just
we don't pay
saying,
'em
once
enough.
they stop making fossil-fired cars, like Volvo, next year, the year after, is going to stop making fossil-fired cars. GM has a huge program going on now where they're trying to get up to 50% of their sales in electric cars by 2030. So, I mean, these are the things that are going to affect this stuff a lot.
Okay.
Okay, but I will,
So-
Tony, to your point, I'll talk to the district.
All right. So we've got a number of other things to go over, so I want to keep going. Michael or Eric, you
Yep.
Yeah.
continue on?
Thanks for ushering us along here. Get back to this checklist. Still want to provide, understanding to the group of what everything is here for the certification effort. So just real quick to do so, there are a number of categories in the LEED certification. Just wanted to quickly touch on each of them. Right off the bat, first one is what it's called integrated process. And so that's really speaking to the design team and the, all the stakeholders kind of being on the same page early on in the process. And as you're all aware, the early SD level analysis, that's certainly happening for this project.
When they do an analysis like this, the integrated process, do you look at making the operation of the school consistent with the power pool ups and downs?
So for
like
this
a GED analysis, in other words, you optimize the operation by making it consistent, and that minimizes demand costs and everything else by making it consistent with the operation of the grid.
That's not a requirement of this analysis in particular, the LEED analysis. This is looking more at just design options, not really kind of cost and demand of the electrical system. So this is not that analysis in particular.
But
Just
you
because
are
there are significant savings in terms of operational cost
you
that
are
come from that kind of analysis.
you're getting on our next item
Yeah.
for owner discussion later on. So
Okay.
so good on you. So real quick, LEED checklist, right? Next category, location, transportation, everything tied to location of the school. Incentivizing maybe a different site selection that's not necessarily applicable for this project. Sustainable sites is referring to kind of the neighborhood or the site soils and actual specific boundary of the project. Sorry, find my controls here. Water efficiency speaks for itself, looking to conserve water consumption. Energy and atmosphere, touching on all aspects of energy conservation, energy efficiency. This demand response is what Tom is referring to, and we'll kind of break that out in a moment. But also another question is renewable energy production. And materials and resources category is looking at the actual materials and kind of construction practices for the project. There's conversations earlier about embodied carbon, and that's where we would find this in the materials and resources category. In indoor environmental quality, speaking to the interior within the weather barrier of the project, and whether that be kind of ventilation, air quality, or just kind of the environment for the end users. And then there is an innovation category for any measures or strategies that the project wants to do that's kind of above and beyond and not located in the LEED certification standard. And the last category is just regional priority. And so there are kind of designated bonuses for the project achieving specific categories that have been deemed important for the location and region of the project. So those are the categories of LEED standard. We wanted to run through real quick, just the yes, maybes, and nos for the project, get everyone on the same page right off the bat. And so, integrated process. Again, speaking to the SD level analysis, we've kind of feel like we've touched on the requirements for this early design-based analysis. For location, transportation, sensitive land protection, just looking at the selection of the site. We're not on, prime farmland. It's a previously developed site, so we're all good there. High priority site. The project is located in HUD designated difficult development area. So we're achieving 1 point there. We may be eligible for a second point here should the environmental site assessment find that remediation is necessary for the site. So maybe not a point that we want to get because that requires remediation of the site, but if that needs to happen and it's completed, then there's an additional point we pick up there.
Michael, if I could just interrupt, I'm not sure if we have time to go through all of the individual items, and I'm wondering if we should kind of focus more on the questions that we've got for them, and then if anyone has any particular questions about any particular item, we did send them the chart ahead of time. We can certainly ask and answer any questions people have on any specific items.
Sure. Okay. So that gets us to Tom's question then, and that one. So demand response, Tom was asking if we're looking at the operations of the building and any measures to kind of shed load during some peak demand times. This is referred to as demand response. There are programs with the utility that incentivize participants to lower their energy consumption during peak demand days, like maybe today when it's extremely hot and the grid is going to be pressured to provide more electricity for customers. And so this helps, the environmental impact of peak demand days and everyone just blasting air conditioning is additional power plants need to be turned on, and these are referred to as kind of peak power plants. And these are the lesser efficient, coal-fired or oil-fired energy plants. And so, it's increased environmental detriment of kind of higher peak demand. There is monetary incentive for this project or Westwood to enroll in the program. And so there may, it's not a decision for right now. This is more a heads up and maybe a question for later. The design team is going to look at a feasible path to achieving the requirements for this demand response as it relates to the LEED credit to shed 10% of peak demand when called for.
Michael, I'm going to interject on this one so that we don't spend too much time on that, because if this project is designed efficiently and then it's going to run to achieve a 25 EUI or lower, we have extremely low capacity for the excess capacity that we can share. And so this is going to be low priority because what is needed to run the school is already being trimmed all the way down to the bottom if it is done correctly. So for the moment, I'm going to push this to the low priority item because of the fact that we won't have that much capacity to shed any load if it's done correctly.
And further on what you're saying, energy efficiency tends to minimize the flexibility for demand response. The more efficient you are, the less able you are to vary the load of the building. But we do have an emergency generator here, which could be enrolled itself. And the emergency generator could be turned on and take the building partially offline, and you could get credits for that.
Yeah. So I think that the simple direction is, aside from the emergency generator, we really shouldn't spend too much effort on this.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. So from a LEED perspective, flipping on your generator doesn't count. They want you to turn down the building. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, but it does get money for the school.
Right. I was particularly responding to the LEED compliance element.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on to PVs. Rob, did you want to jump in?
Sure. So this is a layout of a very conceptual level of where we might be able to put photovoltaic panels on the roof. And it's actually a little bit overambitious. What we did is reached out to a company called Select Energy out of Hopkinton, Massachusetts, and reviewed our initial assumptions on the amount of PV that we can get on the roof and the amount of power output. And their feedback was, we had estimated like 580 kilowatts.
Yeah.
Kilowatts, and they said, when you take into account other pathways and everything we need to get in here, is probably closer to about 500 is what we think you can get, which amounts to, we're estimating probably somewhere between 70-80% of the total power load that the school will have. So we'll have to wait and see how it all shakes out, but that's kind of more or less. So the balance of that remaining would be to get to net zero would be purchased with renewable energy certificates. But going back to the PV for a minute, so we reached out to Select Energy to get an understanding of what are these kind of two options that we would be looking at. One would be through a power purchasing agreement, which is the standard process that a lot of schools go through and use, versus purchasing the panels, the solar panels outright. Different towns do it different ways. I think Dave Menser from our office is on with us, and he's had experience with Needham, where I believe in Needham, they purchased panels outright. Is that right, Dave?
That's correct. They did buy them outright. Yep.
And Cambridge does the same thing, but then there are many other towns that go through a power purchasing agreement. And so I asked Select Energy to see if they could just give us a rough idea. So this is very, very big picture. There's a number of assumptions that go into this. So don't hold these numbers tight. These are just I'm trying to use as many adjectives as I can to express that this is very big picture. But the bottom line is that with the numbers that we got from Select Energy, with a 20-year savings of 1.7 million over that time period by purchasing. So the purchase price he was estimating for a 500 kilowatt array was $1 million. If you think of the annual cost of that, let's say roughly $55,000. If you're getting an annual savings of 85,000, you're netting 30,000 per year. And again, this is very broad brush. Through the power purchasing agreement, there's no upfront costs, with a 20-year savings of 1.13 million. And what that does is reduces your provides a fixed rate of electricity from 14 cents per kilowatt hour to 6.8 cents basically per kilowatt hour. Versus purchasing outright, where you might be subject to the same, but you own the panels themselves, and so all the savings go to the school district. Whereas with the power purchasing agreement, the savings go to the developer. They get tax credits. The school district pays a reduced electricity bill at a fixed rate. Under the purchasing power agreement, you buy the panels back at the end of the term. When you purchase the panels, you can sell them in a secondary market. So since you already own them.
So Rob, on this particular issue, that because we have already fixed our budget without the PV in there, and so the only way, sort of under the current circumstances, unless Tom has another source of revenue that can come into this. But even then, that we might run into some issue with MSBA. So this, at best, we can do it as a bid alternate, that if the project comes in low, then we can take this at some point. But at the moment, that I don't think we can spec. The budget does not allow us to go purchase the PV panel outright. So at the moment, I think the only choice is to for the project to consider the power purchase agreement at best.
There is a hybrid that we have. For example, we're negotiating ourselves for we have 3 other solar projects that are going in, and the hybrid one would allow you to buy out the project after 5 years when the tax credits expire. And that would take the roughly the $1 million down to 500,000. And then you get all the benefits going forward for the next 40 years or whatever.
It's just that the initial project at the moment
would be zero.
Have already,
right, we don't have a budget. And we're anticipating, given the rising cost of constructions, we are anticipating future value engineering that we need to do. We're getting a DD estimate in August. I don't see us coming in under budget. So I think to Chin's point, the only option right now for this project is the zero upfront cost option.
I'll just give you just a little input on the Needham process, because it was an MSBA project. They did not pay for their outright purchase through the MSBA funded project. It was a separate allocation from the town with a separate general contractor that came in about halfway through construction and installed it on the roof. But it was not associated with the actual MSBA.
Okay. Yeah. And the MSBA was okay with that, and they didn't reduce the amount of the grant by that?
Correct.
All right, so that's good to know.
So another question, sorry, Chin, I just had another follow-up question for Dave. Did they talk about a power purchase agreement, like in design at all, and say, hey, let's do that?
Yeah, there was a very strange situation that I don't fully understand to this day, where the bonding company would not allow them to do a PPA. I don't know why that was, but the bonding company said, no, we're not going to let another company lease this roof. I haven't run into that in any other project, but that's something.
Did the bonding company get the tax incentives?
I do not know. I don't know the answer to that.
See, that might be the answer why they wouldn't let somebody else do it.
Could be, yeah.
Right,
so I think the simple answer at the moment on the budget side, and I'm speaking, right, is that we can only, if there's a different funding source, then we can consider it. Otherwise, because until that happens, we don't have a whole lot of choice. So we shouldn't waste too much time on that.
Right. Yeah. So the question was really around, makes sense to, I just want to get confirmation that it does make sense that the school district is interested in the power purchasing agreement. And if so, I would suggest we do a follow-up call, maybe with Select Energy, and kind of talk through the process. And then the earlier that a decision is made to lock in a power purchasing agreement, the better the savings and incentives that you get off of that. Because the longer they have these things called block. Power that are allocated, and when you go through each of those blocks of power, your incentives reduce. So the sooner that you can lock it in, the better rate you'll get.
But of course, that changes, so quickly too, because it was supposed to be no incentives after January of this last 2021, but the Biden administration reinstated them, and there is a big push. So looking out the years we're looking at, we really don't know where we are yet.
Yeah, for the time being, I think that this issue should be postponed until we have the project funding agreement, because there are too many too many things up in the air at the moment. And so that once the project is funded, then we can have the discussion about how to move forward with the project funding agreement, because at the moment that we have to get there. And so that's made the decision for the other pieces, because there's not a whole lot to talk about at the moment.
No, I mean, it's early. And I agree that the power purchase agreement is the only option that's practical at this point.
Yeah, the only, and I think that's fine. We can certainly do that. At some point, it is helpful to have the company on board so that we can kind of coordinate.
Well, I mean, the regulations in Massachusetts are in such flux that they're considering, banning fossil fuels altogether by 2035. And then they're going to have to put in some kind of an incentive system to cause people to put more solar on and to convert from fossil fuels over to all electric. Because if they're headed toward, this is why the school being all electric is ideal for the future. We're avoiding a lot of headaches down the road by doing it this way. So it's
The other question that we had that was brought up from Select Energy is, would the school district consider canopies over the parking area to have 100% on site versus
Rob, I'm sorry, but I think that's not a conversation we can have at the moment with the budget constraint.
If you know the battle I have over canopies continually.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we are designing this gorgeous school it's surrounded by nature, and the thought of putting a whole bunch of canopies blocking the view from the street, I don't think that's going to. There's a battle about it at the high school, and that's behind the school. So
Yeah.
I don't even think we need to go there right now.
There's a battle at the Council on Aging, and the only people who can see it is the graveyard.
Yeah.
So if people don't like them, some people say no problem. So it's just one of those things.
Okay, I just
and this is all good information that helps inform the design direction, right? Because if we were thinking about future parking canopies, you do want to look at how your parking is laid out. Well, you have to think about snow. You have to think about a lot of things. So if there's some reasons in the community why we want to avoid that, that gives us the direction we need at this time.
Exactly.
We have two megawatts of canopies planned, waiting for final approval on the Meditech site, where we're leasing the land as a town and the permission from them. When we get all of that put in, we're going to be very close to high 90s in terms of renewable for the town. And so depending on what happens in the future, in terms of increased electric use, will determine how much more solar we may or may not want. So there's lots of questions yet. It's probably very preliminary to worry about this at this point.
Eric or Michael, did you guys have anything else you wanted to go over?
No, I think that just about covered it, right? We recognize that where there's fixed budget nature and multiple competing interests on a lot of these elements, and that's why we're looking to get direction from you guys, and I think you gave us that. We can follow up with a scorecard that we were just looking at that you can review, and well, I'm going to say in paper, but who's printing nowadays? But on your own bigger screen. And if you have any questions about that, we can send a little bit of additional information about registering the project, and are going to continue to refine that lead scorecard as we chug through here through DD and beyond. But appreciate the opportunity to get in front of you again.
Eric, I have one other point that just seems to be a hot topic in town right now. When you're designing and you're looking at the different vendors to come in to put them in, please don't get a specialty item. Like, for example, at the library, the lights were done by one company in California, a headache and a half. The AC was done by Canada. The purchasing agent of Westwood asked me to ask you to make sure that the vendors you can get 3 bids, so that it's like a standard order.
Yeah.
And the warranty, very important. You got a warranty. I mean, the police station, that should never have a dead heating system in there. Somebody screwed up, and as I say,
Yeah.
the finger pointing is amazing. So it's we don't want that here.
So we recognize the public big nature of this project and are working, the team is working to try to limit the number of proprietary products used, and that would be based on direction from Westwood to move that direction. So we're trying to avoid those picadillos. One thing in the Tom or whatever this police station project, which I know nothing about, but one of the good things about the MSBA and the increased level of commissioning they do is they are going to make sure the building's operational. They actually have layered on this monitoring based commissioning piece to the new MSBA scope, which is actually kind of post hoc commissioning, right? They come in with a plan to evaluate the building performance and dig into the data on what's happening in the building, to fine tune operation and look for any issues to avoid, failure, premature failure. So hopefully we're in a good position to avoid some of those complications.
I have a question on the town's commitment to the data sharing component of the program. Is that to confirm the energy use, and then is it tied to MSBA reimbursement at all?
Yeah. So that's a minimum requirement of any LEED project, and it has been for a decade. And it's just shared back-end whole building information that is shared anonymously with the USGBC. There's no implication on your LEED certification. That information is not shared with anyone outside of the USGBC. They are just capturing data for their own internal analysis and research. But there's no implication to the funding or them coming back and saying your energy model says you're going to use this, but you're using that. It's just information sharing.
Yeah, we already collect that information though, so there's no problem. But we don't use the portfolio manager.
You don't.
But we do collect all the information that's
there is other options. But.
Right. There's a couple of things I think I need to answer Brian and also the committee. Is that one is that the MSBA does not look, once you get the LEED certification that satisfies the MSBA requirement for their grant purpose. In terms of the energy use, that what does matter is that if right now the project is in the participating in the Eversource's incentive program, which the second half of that incentive program would only be forwarded with a proven 1 year use that meets the energy requirement. So there is some money tied into that from the perspective of the incentive program from Eversource, which the project is in that program right now.
Outstanding.
Okay, so
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
It says the daylight assessment is pending. The daylight metric is a pending assessment. It says we have 1 no, 2 minus. Does that mean we think we're going to be hit on not enough daylight?
So it's a challenging credit in the way it's written, and it's the project is certainly designed sensitively to maximize daylight, but what the LEED credit actually looks for is meeting. Basically, you can have the lights off for most of the time, and the deepest part of your building is still meeting a certain light level. And what we see is just basically the compliant daylight. The rule of thumb is 2 times the head height of the window. You get that compliant LEED light. But as you go deeper in, you're not at that threshold. So just meeting the LEED criteria has proved challenging. But the design is being sensitively laid out to maximize daylight.
Okay,
and
thank
most
you.
likely you're going to have light harvesting in any event. Built into
Certainly will have
yeah.
daylight harvesting and daylight responsive controls. This is just the picadillo of the lead credit and getting to that required percent of floor area that meets the credit criteria.
Yeah, and that does happen. You know, there are items on there that, you know, we are including and are sustainable, but maybe, you know, we might not hit, you know, the fourth item out of the, you know, we might do 3 out of the 4 items of this one particular credit to achieve it. And so that because we can't achieve that last item because it's going to cost extra or it's going to require, you know, something else to happen, then we might not get that credit. Which, you know, my understanding, you know, from our group is the approach is, hey, you know, our first priority is meeting the MSBA requirements for LEED certification. We want to design a highly sustainable building, but we're not necessarily out here, you know, trying to, you know, just get LEED points. And so,
Exactly.
so that's been kind of our approach to this.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. We're trying to avoid point chasing. We don't want to just go after some sort of element of a LEED credit just for a LEED point, unless we hear from the community that there's interest in that strategy.
Or some advantage financially or otherwise to doing it. There's no point. Things that, you know, there are a lot of things on that list that necessarily cost money and don't really add much to the efficiency of the building at all. And in fact, you know, that's one of my problems with LEED in general, is that it can be expensive. There are certain things in terms of efficiency which are pay for themselves and are worthwhile doing and pushing. There are other things that are worthwhile pushing, but there are a lot of things on there that, in my opinion, that's again, which is my opinion personally, but it's not worth doing.
Yeah, and I think we heard that from this group and from the community at large during the early phases of the project, right? Energy efficiency, EUI was important, and that's been a primary focus. And then we're certainly want to hit that LEED silver threshold, but we don't want to go chasing things.
So I guess the only other question is I never realized that we want to reduce urinal use. Just a joke. The water use, the indoor water use, if we reduce urinal use, we get points.
Sorry, what about the urinals?
No, that we want to reduce the use of those, right? Is that what it's, am I reading it right?
No, don't want to reduce those.
Yeah, it's kind of a quirk of urinals right now, right? The kind of baseline is a whole gallon per flush, but everyone's using these pint flush, so that's 1/8 of the use. So when you actually have urinals in a project, you see higher LEED water savings.
Okay.
But I know maybe from an operational perspective or a maintenance perspective or a cleaning perspective, there may be some reasons to avoid that. But that's a different discussion.
Thank you.
So for the anything else, Rob, that we need to go through?
You know, I don't think so. You know, I think we've got enough information for now. And, you know, if things do pop up, you know, you can certainly just send an email out to the group, right?
And then in terms of sort of thinking, and then I think that we will also consider things like if we think that for instance, the parking lot and the charging station that maybe further down the road that we can talk about whether we want to put in some empty conduits just so that way if you want to install that in the future, it's easier for that purpose. Or so when we know more about the budget, that we can have that conversation.
Yeah, but it would further, assuming that this program that Eversource has now doesn't go away, they'll pay you to do exactly what you're saying. They'll pay whatever the cost is, so it's not going to be a cost adder at all.
Yeah, I will check with Eversource to see whether they have that agreement with MSBA already, and then so if so, we can continue, we can take the appropriate action on that.
Okay. Anything else on the discussion items?
Stay cool out there.
Yeah, all right. Okay, is there any new business that anyone wants to raise? Nope. Okay, so I think the only thing left is I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Motion to adjourn.
Okay, can I get a
I second.
second? Thank you. All right, Ken is not here. Brian,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Lemma,
Yes.
Tony,
Yay.
and I am a yes. So we are adjourned. Thank you,
Everybody.
everyone.
you.
Thank you, Eric and Michael. We appreciate your help today. And Rob, of course, as always, invaluable, and Chin as well. So thanks, everybody, and stay cool.